The death of Alexander the Great is only the beginning. It is not the end of any classical story. Look at the statue. In Thessaloniki, it's almost in the exact spot where Alexander gazed across the sea, ready to lead the world. He's only 21 years old. Skip ahead a dozen years. Divine Alexander the Great had defeated every enemy. His vision was being played out on a world stage, but he could not defeat death. He died young. And the tectonic plates of history begin to shift, and now it's the birth of classical kingdoms. New superpowers. They're going to flourish for centuries, light up the world with art and science and invention and glory, just like Alexander's vision was of his world, of our world. So who takes charge now? Alexander's dead. He failed to leave successors a plan to build this future classical world. Instead, he leaves a riddle. It's a puzzle that we're going to solve in this lesson. He just whispers, "To the strongest." I'm Mr. Hull, and this is Ancient History. Welcome to Classical Kingdoms, where timeless stories reveal truth and wisdom. For your journey, this is lesson number 42. It's your ancient history course. It's really about classical kingdoms. So many lessons before have been about the backstory, and here we are in the classical age, the Hellenistic Age, and we're reaping the benefits of the inheritance. Go ahead, open up your history notebooks. Get a fresh page and let's start looking at some classical kingdoms. It's the Hellenistic period. That's what historians call it. And it may start to look really modern. It's a time of globalization. It's a time of scientific explosion and greatly improved warfare. So first we will tackle the funeral of Alexander, the funeral games, we should call it, because this is going to be a rough period. It's going to tear the empire apart. But we'll learn the different names of these new dynasties that are taking over the different parts of Alexander's map, like Ptolemy, Antigonus, Seleucus, his friends, his top generals. And you'll learn they fight more than just land. They are fighting for the best libraries, for the best legacy. And that's about the time when you will say, hey, I'm an heir to this inheritance. This is my culture to the Western civilization. So this lesson is also going to teach you about power and the setup of Alexander's legacy, the setup of these centuries, and then look ahead, because Rome is not that far away. So by the end of this episode, you will level up as a classical scholar. Well, before we get to the funeral, let's just open our history books and look at the timeline of these ages so that we can orient ourselves to where we are on the map of time. First, it was the Archaic Age, so 800 BC to 480 BC, after the Bronze Age collapse, when Homer wrote down the Iliad and the tales of the Trojan War. The first Olympics were starting in the Archaic Age. Next, we have the Classical Age. It's the Golden Age of Athens, but it's going to spread so far beyond just Athens. It's what we saw with the struggle with Macedonia gaining more power. You saw these in lessons 38, 39, as Alexander was growing up as a teen, and his dad was setting him up for this legacy now. So from 480 BC to 323 BC, we call that the Classical Age. Pericles, Golden Age of Athens, the Parthenon was built, the philosophy of Socrates and Plato. So it's an era that's really defined by independent classical kingdoms, these little city-states, the polis of ancient Greece, but the spread all over the Aegean Sea and beyond. But here we are in the Hellenistic Age. It begins precisely in 323 BC at the death of Alexander. Now, why? That's what this lesson will be for. It will be for explaining and understanding the shift, the epic shift in what history experiences for us still today after the death of Alexander. It's going to go all the way to the year 30 BC. Cleopatra, the rise of Rome. So I'm excited about all of these upcoming lessons. So I hope you take a look at Classical Kingdoms, classicalkingdoms.com, mapping out this entire complete ancient history course. But the Hellenistic Greek influence is really about the whole world, not just Athens or Corinth. It is more influential, and we see it because that's part of Alexander's vision. And it's flooding across beyond the Middle East. It touched India, and when we get to Rome, you'll see what's happening. But let's get back to the funeral. You know, Babylon, June 323 BC, humid, thick air, and the smell of something diseased. You know, the mosquito has given him malaria. We don't really know. But the man lying on the bed is only 33 years old, and he had conquered everything, the known world, from Greece all the way to India. King of kings, Lord of lords, and he was the son of God. Philip II was a god, according to the people back home. And if you ask Egyptians, Alexander's the god. Or if you asked his mother, Alexander's the son of Zeus. He is God, Alexander, but suddenly Alexander the Great is dead. The silence in the room must have been terrifying. When he died, the closest friends, his generals, were sad, but scared. Who's going to take over, right? He whispered to the strongest, as if to give them a puzzle to solve on their own. Who's going to take over for Alexander? There just wasn't a plan for this. And people like Ptolemy are in the room. You know, we mentioned Ptolemy back in lesson 38. He was in school, growing up in Aristotle's school. And lesson 39, all these guys were part of the inheritance. And they've been with him now for well over a dozen years on conquest. And we don't have a plan of succession. Historians call this moment the detonation of political singularity. The empire instantly shatters. It's going to be violent for many decades. It's a free-for-all, known as the Wars of the Diadochi. The Diadochi, Greek word for successors. And spoiler alert, no one successor is taking this. Sorry about spoiling that, but these men were once brothers in arms. Ate together, grew up together, and now they have to be rivals. And they have to tear the world apart, at least a little bit, in order to claim their piece of the pie. There is one problem that they're all going to face. How do you prove that you are a legitimate king? How does any king claim legitimacy? You know, no one here is related to Alexander. Is that sometimes the way kings claim legitimacy, that they're part of a dynasty? They are heirs by blood. In the ancient world, legitimacy is physical. It was about the body, to hold the body of the king like he's your father, like he's your friend. And to be with that body is to claim the succession. Who is the heir of Alexander the Great? Who's going to take over? Do you have a favorite? Who's your second favorite Diadochi, by the way? What's the most fascinating thing, which is what we're here for today, is the legacy survives. All of the Hellenistic gifts that Alexander wanted to give to people, those remain and grew and became stronger. But okay, back to the body, because we have a corpse, and these guys are going to try to put themselves next to the corpse, quite literally and figuratively. So imagine about 2 years after his death, the empire has emptied its treasury to build a transport for Alexander's body. Why do we have to transport his body? Remember, he died in Babylon. Babylon is a capital city, and it was spectacular and could have been his final resting place, but he's not Babylonian. He's Macedonian. Has origins with the Greek culture. Should he be back there? Is that where he's going? We're going to transport his body in the most expensive object ever constructed in antiquity. Possibly. A hearse, a golden hearse. It's more than a carriage. It is literally like a mobile temple. It features a golden Ionic colonnade that measures 12 by 8 cubits. What is a cubit? The cubit is like this distance. It's like 16 or 18 inches from your elbow to the tip of your finger. This is our ancient understanding of a spectacular mobile temple. The roof is covered in gold scales set with jewels to mimic the starry night sky. It's got a golden olive wreath that's so large, it flashes in the sun from miles away. And to pull this massive weight, they selected 64 of the strongest mules. And they didn't just harness the mules, they crowned each of the mules with gilded horns and collars of precious stones. Are you picturing this? You know, one of the most incredible details was the engineering and evidence of one of the new inventions. Because the roads are so bumpy in the Persian Empire, we got to protect Alexander's body. So engineers have invented shock absorbers, suspension system. Well, okay, we're set up, glittering, shining, moving without bouncing. Slow march from Babylon. We're supposed to go to Macedonia. And this body, if this body was to reach Macedonia, the old regency would hold the power. They're trying to be with the body, with the legacy, with the vision. But Ptolemy the First, the governor of Egypt, we've seen it on the map, and Ptolemy has a different idea. His plan is to possess the body and to claim that he is the true heir, being so close and a schoolmate, a confidant, a trusted general. Ptolemy is in Egypt, where Alexandria is already becoming one of the best cities in the world. So Ptolemy executes the first great geopolitical heist in history. He marches his army into Syria and intercepts this this beautiful hearse. He doesn't ask, he takes. He hijacks. This golden hearse heads south to Egypt, and he entombs Alexander, first in Memphis and later in the city of Alexandria. Just stay with us to the end, because you've got to get the full picture. It's really going to mean a lot. But Ptolemy is proving that he is important. But now, ask yourself, what would you do if you didn't have the body? Because Ptolemy he pulled this thing off. The other generals, they have a major problem. So you cannot be the only king anymore. You must prove that you are the greatest king, the strongest. That was the puzzle. That was the plan. And so the Diadochi have to engage in kind of a technological arms race to build the biggest, scariest things possible. They've got to shock the population into obedience. And look at the Battle of Ipsus in 301 BC as just one example. We're skipping over lots of these, but this is called the Battle of the Kings. And on one side is old Antigonus, the one-eyed. On the other side is Seleucus, the first, the ruler of the East. Seleucus needs a weapon that no one else has. He makes a deal with the Mauryan emperor, an Indian emperor, Chandragupta. What does India have? India has the best elephants. They're better than African elephants. That's what everybody says. So he trades vast territories of Hindu Kush and Afghanistan for 500 elephants. 500 elephants. Does that sound like a deal you'd be interested in? Visualize 500 elephants lined up for battle. These are super tanks of antiquity. At Ipsus, Seleucus uses them to create a living, breathing wall. They block the enemy cavalry. They trample the infantry. The dust, the noise, the sheer terror of these beasts. They shatter the enemy army. Let's move on to siege warfare. Meet Demetrius, the son of Antigonus. His nickname was the Besieger. The Besieger in 305 BC attacks the island of Rhodes. The island of Rhodes, very important Hellenistic island, a classical kingdom of all. Many classical kingdoms. He builds a machine called the Hellepolis. The Hellepolis. We just saw the Hellepolis. Alexander was using it with Tyre. Lesson 40. In the siege, it's a word that means taker of cities. It's a siege tower that defies logic. So this one could be the first best. It's plated in iron sheets this time. They can stop flaming arrows better than the pelts, the cattle pelts. It's packed with catapults and ballista on every single level now. This is new. This is a super weapon, and it requires 3,400 strong men just to push it forward into position. So imagine the sound of this machine creaking toward your city walls, and it was a psychological weapon designed to make you feel small. But here's the twist. The siege falls, and the Rhodians flood the ground, and the massive machine gets stuck in the mud. It's too heavy. It's got a lot of metal in it. Demetrius has to abandon it. Demetrius has to leave. Doesn't work to help his dad, the Antigonus part of this map. So what do the Rhodians do with this 9-story monster? They strip it down. They get all the iron, a lot of heavy metal, the bronze, weapons that were left behind, and melt them down. Kind of like my favorite part about the end of the Persian Wars in 480 BC. Melt this down and make a monument, make a trophy of sorts. And so this is the Colossus of Rhodes. They build the Colossus of Rhodes, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. It's a 100-foot tall statue of the sun god Helios. It stood for 50 years as one of the 7 wonders, and this is the perfect allegory of the Hellenistic Age. This is the age we're in. They took the machinery of death and melted it down into a monument of awe and wonder. I wonder what could happen next. Now, these wars aren't just going to be with the weapons and the hardware, and they also need to win with the software, the ideas. The conflict is going to shift from the battlefield into the library. Are you familiar with this? Are you familiar with the library at Alexandria, at Pergamum, the importance of libraries? Think about where you go to get information right now. decades ago, we still cared more about libraries than any place. Like in the 1980s, in my high school years, I loved going to the library. Many different libraries. It was a big event, and we were instructed on how to get some of the special files, the little microfiche, and dig through old newspapers, and it was a real treasure hunt. So the Ptolemies in Egypt, they are going to lead Alexandria as being the top brain power site of the world. So who's the biggest source of information now? This would be the Ptolemies. I mean, I'm asking you, like, where do you think all the information is right now? Like, where do we think is the best spot for it? And I'm just comparing that to Alexandria. The Ptolemies in Egypt are the best, and they build the Museon. Remember, back in lesson 37, Plato and his Museon. For the muses, the library, the place of learning. It's not just a museum where you go to look at old pottery, which I love to do. This is a royal research institute, a think tank. It's where the smartest people on earth will go. And they build this great library at Alexandria, and their goal is aggressive. It's really quite simple, too. Collect every book in the world. every scroll, we should say. Books are not yet invented, but scrolls, knowledge, it's what it's stored on. They create this ship fund. What is the ship fund? Every ship that docks in Alexandria is searched by the authorities. They're not looking for contraband, or it's not a drug search or whatever. They're looking for scrolls. Why are they looking for scrolls? Because if they find one, if they find a scroll, they confiscate it, they copy the scroll, and they give the copy back to the captain. This has always rubbed me. This is make you so frustrated. But hey, you get a copy, and you know that the original is in the library. So Alexandria is the best, but guess what? They've got a rival. Another place that I have been to, I love my experience at Pergamum. The site of Pergamum, the Acropolis, is really steep. We have to ride kind of like a ski lift, funicular, up to get to the top of Pergamum, where you see these structures. It's quite famous. The theater there, the temple, or the altar of Zeus. That's the real famous one, mentioned in the book of Revelation, the altar of Zeus with the beautiful architecture everywhere. Well, Pergamum is a key capital city. In fact, that's a key classical kingdom that is resisting the power of some of the Diadochi. So that's a whole nother story. But Pergamum is strong, and they are building a library. Is it going to be better than the library at Alexandria? Because I know that the Ptolemies are furious. Do you know what the Ptolemies do? Because they're trying to get a monopoly. They're trying to be the strongest in knowledge. The Ptolemies place an embargo on the export of papyrus. What is an embargo? It's a trade block. They stop exporting papyrus. Why? Because that's paper, papyrus. It's where we get the word paper. And I hope I mentioned this in lesson 9. That's your establishing lesson about Egypt, and papyrus was something that the Egyptians invented in the first paper. So what do you do when no one is allowed to buy paper? Because the Egyptians have embargoed paper. They think that by embargo, the embargo will stop scrolls from being taken to Pergamum, and that'll give the Ptolemies Alexandria's advantage, the library at Alexandria. But do you know what I'm going to say next? Like, does something like this sound like a smart move? Like, we're going to, stop advancing something that people want. What happens next? Innovation, invention. So the scholars of Pergamum are desperate. They've got to get their ideas. They can't get any papyrus, so they innovate. This is what happens in a free market economy. Innovation, new invention. They perfect a process of using animal skins, stretching them, drying them, getting them really thin, treating them with lime, and essentially create a new material called pergamini. Pergamum, pergamini, we call it parchment. Now, do you have any boxes of fancy paper around your house, or have you ever had a certificate? Parchment, I don't know if I could find like a real piece of parchment now, but this is a pretty good, they usually put kind of a parchment look to it. You can also see there's fancy cotton papers with linen that's more like papyrus was. Papyrus is kind of like a woven, and parchment had kind of this more blotchy impression to it. But, let's just think paper money feels special. You could run it through the wash. These are very durable. So there is Turkish lira there. When I got this, it was actually worth something. And Pergamum is in Turkey. So you get some idea. There's 1,000 drachma from a while ago. And that's kind of a parchment feel to that paper. So problem solved, right? Papyrus actually is not as durable. So not only did the Egyptians lose out on their papyrus sales from doing the embargo, but they also forced people to invent something better. And because the Ptolemies tried to hoard all this brain power, the software of the Hellenistic Age, Pergamum invented better hardware, essentially. And so there'll be a significant power, a classical kingdom to challenge some of these others. But it's the type of story that's going on all over the Hellenistic world. We're just giving you a few of those. Most of the ancient literature that we have today, it was preserved because of parchment and because of Pergamum. There will be a story about the Library at Alexandria having a fire. And so they had to go and get copies made from Pergamum. So we'll get to all of that. The embargo has backfired. Hellenism, the Hellenistic empire, is being preserved and spread by this competition between those two competing libraries. Now, we've been talking about scrolls and knowledge and library. Did you stop to think what language all of this was in? While the kings are off fighting in the battlefield and there's innovations and weapons and all of that, there's another battle going on, the battle of language. And it's essentially spreading everywhere, and it's called Koine Greek. Koine Greek. Koine is a Greek word meaning the common dialect Greek. And that continued. So that was a solution that was needed for Alexander's army for his success, but it continued. It spread. Koine Greek becomes the operating system, the common language of the entire known world, the world that was united by Alexander from as far away as Spain to India. People were aware of Koine Greek because of trade, because of interactions, because of Alexander's conquests. It manages everything. An interesting piece of evidence to show how much it managed, how much Greek was used. There's this trash heap in Egypt called the Xenon Papyri. It represents a bunch of files from a bunch of mid-level bureaucrats. There's one that was named Xenon. And so we're reading the paperwork of Xenon. It gets people pretty excited, actually, but it's Koine Greek. Koine Greek was being used for everything. They've got slave trade records. They've got olive oil records. They have a dispute about the quality of mattress stuffing recorded in ancient Koine Greek. The language becomes the universal solvent that dissolves away local barriers to communication. And so everybody is going to maybe speak Koine Greek enough to do business, in addition to their home language, their local language. People in the Middle East, people, let's say in Jerusalem, would probably at this point know 3 languages. They would know Hebrew, that would be the Jerusalem local language. They would know Koine Greek. There was also Aramaic. Aramaic was a throwback a language of the Fertile Crescent area and really ancient language. So Koine Greek is the new version of it. And to know 2 or 3 languages was important for most people. How many of you know more languages than just one? Put it in the chat for which languages you know. And if you haven't clicked the like button yet, do it. Subscribe to Classical Kingdoms. So Koine Greek is going to still matter when the Roman Empire comes along. Do you know that in 272 BC, there was a Greek slave named Livius Andronicus? He is famous for bringing Koine Greek to Rome. He had Homer's Iliad and the Odyssey, and he had it in Greek because it's Greek. What does he do? He translates it into Latin. He teaches the Romans how to write literature the way it's been for so long in ancient Greece, things like the Iliad and the Odyssey. Do you know this very next lesson, 43, will be about the Roman version of that? So Livius Andronicus proves that you can conquer Greece with soldiers, but Greece will conquer you with the culture, with the language, with the ideas. The Roman poet Horace later even admits to this. He wrote, "Captive Greece took captive her savage conqueror, but in the hills of Judah, Israel, or the Latin district Judea, where Jerusalem is, we're going to see the Greek wave hit something of a wall." At this time, Antiochus IV is marching into Jerusalem, 168 BC, and he wants to erase that monotheistic Jewish difference. Shouldn't people just be polytheistic? You know, what difference does it make? More gods, the better, right? Antiochus IV called himself Epiphanes, that he is the appearance of God, right? These guys, they're classical kingdoms, you know, divine status gives you all this power. Okay. But Antiochus IV puts up a statue of Zeus inside the Holy Temple. He slaughters a pig on the sacred altar. This is the Jewish temple, the one that the Persians helped rebuild. He makes it illegal to possess the Torah, the scroll, the sacred text, the scrolls. It is punishable by death. You can't make this stuff up. So he tries to even burn those parchment scrolls because he thinks that that'll delete the memory of the followers of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the monotheistic people, the ones led by Moses. We touched on this if you go back to lesson 10 and the establishment of Abraham's legacy. But this is the time when a small band of fighters, the Maccabees, the Maccabean revolt, they refuse to bow down. And this becomes a guerrilla war. What is guerrilla warfare, right? It's not the organized maneuvers and phalanx. It's sneaking around. It's a different type of war. The guerrilla war against a superpower like the forces of Antiochus. Could the Maccabean revolt ever succeed? They win. They return to the temple. They scrub the defiling blood from the floor, and they light the holy lamp. Jewish people remember this victory now as Hanukkah. and the story of the Festival of Lights, and they needed the oil, the miracle. But it's proving a powerful truth that burning the scroll, I mean, does burning books ever really even work? But the saying, you can burn the scroll, but the letters fly free. Now, shortly after that, 168 BC, Antiochus is outside Alexandria, and he meets Rome, an envoy from Rome. You know, Antiochus is trying to conquer Egypt. He wants to expand his classical kingdoms. But this old man, the Roman envoy Popilius, what is an envoy? That is your ambassador, your messenger from Rome. You know, he doesn't have an army. Antiochus has an army with him. He's trying to conquer Egypt. Popilius just has a walking stick. And he walks out there to meet Antiochus the king to deliver the message from the Roman Senate. He hands it to the king. Go home. The Roman Senate says, go home. Stop trying to take over Egypt. The king laughs. He says, well, I don't know. I'll think about it. Go consult my people. Popilius doesn't argue with him. He just grabs his stick, and through the dust, he carves a circle around the king's feet. And he says, give me an answer before you step out of this ring, the circle in the sand. Antiochus looks at the line in the sand. And what do you think he does? As we all are wondering in the future, we have Roman lessons coming. And this is so significant because when he steps out, he bows his head to the Roman envoy. He bows his head to the Roman Senate and says, I'll do what you say. I'll do what the Roman Senate wants. The era of these classical kings with divinity and so much authority, it's changing right before our eyes. Centuries later, the Roman Empire, led by Augustus, is going to visit Alexander's tomb. And you know, he leans in to kiss the mummy. Odd, strange, but they revere. They see what this legacy means, the Hellenistic Age, and it matters for centuries and still matters today. That's why you're still watching this lesson. But when Augustus kisses the mummy, he accidentally breaks off the nose. He breaks the mummy. It's old, it's brittle, and that's weird. You shouldn't do that. But you can see now the physical body is broken, it's ruined. The inheritance is not about the body. It was wise. It actually worked out for Ptolemy very well that he had taken the body there, that was Alexander's resting place. And it does make Alexandria one of the legacy cities, one of the top 5 cities in the Roman world moving forward. City of Alexandria has the library, which will become the best in all the world. But look at all the other exciting legacies. I mean, I wish we could just list them all. You know, have you taken a geometry class? Euclidean geometry, the philosophy. Now, the Stoics are a big deal. It started with Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. But the Stoics will really shape Roman law and culture. And Koine Greek, that's an international language. It's going to be the language of the New Testament as Christianity spreads with the help also of Latin, another international language people will know both. And the old Greek Empire might have come undone as the Romans take charge, but the ambition of kings, the statue of Alexander at Thessaloniki at the edge of the water looking across, he's only one part of this. Classical kingdoms, the complete course. You've got to know it all, and this is only at one level. But these are ideas about how to have a flourishing life, human flourishing, eudaimonia, the Greek idea, Aristotle's idea of living the best life. And that is going to survive and grow. Thank you for taking the time to learn something that matters in all of history, and that includes your history, some classical truth for your journey. Because kingdoms rise and fall, power fades, but virtue endures.